again to Modern Guitar Harmony. We're lucky to have Ben Monder here once again talking about his new album Planetarium, which came out October 2024, I believe. I think that was right, Ben.
Yeah, September 27th.
September, October, yeah. It's a big project, triple CD, 3-act, long form.
Uh,
And some of the pieces are quite impressively long as well. You've got the
well, they're long. I don't know if impressive is the word.
Ataraxia, 20 minutes. And that's a big piece of music to work on with ensemble, voice, drums, bass. There's a lot
Yeah.
going on
Well,
there.
most of the advice I got was to not release 3 records at once because nobody's
Hmm.
going to listen to that. And I did consider that advice and I just discarded it, obviously, because I just didn't want to prolong the project that much longer. I just, needed to get it out of my system
Hmm.
and move on. Um, so then the challenge was to program it in a way that it could potentially be engaging for the entire length, which, I don't know if I succeeded, but I think I got as close as I could have with the material. But yeah, it was challenging. And the reason it ended up being quite as long as it was at a certain point, I realized I have like way too much slow music and it's just going to be a snooze fest if I don't write something a little peppier. So I just kept like adding and then adding other things to counterbalance that, and then it just ended up being as long as it is. And there's even a tune that I did not include that I recorded, which is like another slow tune, and there just was not a good place for it programmatically. So that's sort of the short story of that.
And about the title, Planetarium, have you got a specific planetarium in mind? I'm thinking of is it the Hayden Planetarium in New York?
Very good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the tune had a different, the title tune of the record had a different working title, and
Mm.
just like searching around blindly for something else to call it, I happened on that because I don't know, it seemed somewhat evocative of like things orbiting around, and I have a childhood connection to the Hayden Planetarium where I used to go a lot as a kid
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
in New York. So um, it's not much deeper than that. And then what am I going to call the record? The first thing you go to, is there a title of one of the pieces that it could be called, and that seemed to be the most appropriate. So there you have it.
It's a lovely theme and it stretches beyond the science side, which is, I'm a little older than you, but it's our generation with the moon landings and the fascination with
Mm-hmm.
science, and then
Mm-hmm.
into science fiction and the whole sort of mysteries of that. Urubos will come on to in a little while, but the I'm just thinking today the Euclid mission has started to publish photographs, and they've got 1% of the photographs they've taken of the 3D map of the universe, and that's just been publicized today in
Oh,
the press. So
okay. I'll have to look into
I
that.
think
I
you'll
had no
enjoy
idea.
that. This is a little digressive, but it's
Yeah,
popping in the mix.
right. Well, I didn't mean for any of the themes to be too science fictiony, but
Yeah.
you could certainly take it that way.
I was thinking of Kerouac's Dr. Sachs has got Urubos in it. I don't know if you remember reading that as a kid. Jack Kerouac's sci-fi book.
No, I had no
Oh,
idea he wrote a sci-fi book.
yeah. Oh, I'm not trying to describe it. It's Dr. Sachs. It's nothing to do with saxophone players, but the world
Right.
snake's one of the characters in it. So
Who's one of the characters?
the world snake, Urubos, is actually
Okay.
a mythical
Maybe
character.
I thought it was Ouroboros. Maybe I've
Urubos.
been okay,
Yeah.
been mispronouncing it in my
Sorry,
head
excuse me.
this whole time.
It's my English accent.
Okay.
Um, You've you've got 3 tracks with a reference to that name on it. There's Urobo and
Right. Okay.
Urubos.
So
Could you clarify that for us?
okay. So it's the image of the snake eating its own tail,
Yeah.
and which seemed to be appropriate for those cyclical, nature of the piece, or of the pattern that the piece is based on. And I don't know how technical you want me to get, but I guess vary, since it's a technical sort of a show. Uh, the idea is, here I like got a pilot charts right next to me, because I knew I was going to forget what I was thinking about when I wrote any of these. But the idea is, I had 3 bars of 13/8, and each eighth note was divided into 16th note triplets. So I basically have like 13 groups of 16th note triplets.
Yeah.
And I'm dividing those triplets in this pattern of there's basically 4 groups of 7, 2 groups of 4, and a group of 3. Not a group, but a 3, a segment of 3. And so originally I thought I could just arrange the 4 7s and 1 3 in every possible arrangement that exists. That ended up being way too much material, so I just abbreviated it to 3 bars. And so the patterns go 7 7 4 7 7 4, and then the 3 is at the end. The next bar, I put the 3 in the middle, so 7 7 4 3 7 7 4, and then I put the 3 in the beginning, 3 7 7 4 7 7 4, and that's basically that. And then there's a bar of at the end of that, 3 4 3 4 3 4 3 4 3, and then actual 30-second notes. So like 3/8 notes divided into each 4. So it actually ends up being a 13 and a third over 8.
Right.
Is the last bar of the cycle. So that's kind of that. And so I wrote that initially for guitar and percussion, and the guitar's tuned down a minor second, just because I don't want everything to be in E, So, so that Ouroboros 1 is for that slightly detuned guitar and percussion. Then the harmony is something else. It's just like slowly moving voices. Then there are a couple of other themes, counter themes that come in, but basically it's that cycle of triplets, 16th triplets. And so then the number 2, it's this. I kind of had 2 choices what I wanted to do harmonically. The first choice I made was what became number 1. Then I thought it was also attractive to treat the same cycle with just more chordal harmony, and that became number 2. So the pattern's the same. The last bar is a little bit different. So after the 3 bars of 13, the 4th bar is slightly different, but otherwise it's pretty much the same idea of that cycle. But I'm just harmonically, it's quite a bit different. And then I have the voices on top of that, sort of rubbing against the whole thing, so it's not too soporific.
And that's the sung voices, not the guitar voices.
Yeah, exactly. Which are all just, I think it's at certain points it's as many as 8 or 10 layers. So it's kind of a melody, but each note actually endures through the entire phrase, so becoming a chord.
And the $100 question: is there improvisation as well in these as scoring? Because it sounds as if sometimes there might be. I'm thinking some of the lead guitar lines sound improvised, and occasionally the voices do too.
Are you talking about specifically the Ouroboros pieces?
Probably thinking of Ouroboros 2 in the extended
Uh,
sections.
no, there's
Oh,
nothing
all
improvised.
scored. Good grief.
Yeah. Um, I mean, there's like that coda at the end,
Mhm.
but guitar and voice are in sync there,
Yeah.
and I'm playing the theme that was introduced kind of in the middle. I don't know, it's probably pretty obvious, but I'm just reintroducing that theme in the coda. But it's actually out of time with the track, and so it's not supposed to be syncing up at
Yeah.
all. I think I calculated some kind of ratio, like what speed it sounded best at, but we recorded it just in space, right? So I just put the metronome on the tempo that it needed to be to fit over the track, and then we recorded it and then just like tacked it on. So it's completely out of sync with the guitars, but intentionally so.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, can I ask about the variation on the title in the short piece? Is
Oh
it
yeah,
Robo as
well
well because the
that's
spelling's different?
yeah that's just the voices from the first track
Yeah.
isolated.
Ah,
So I just took it and put it there as just in an attempt to sort of tie things together, and that introduces you know the number one version.
yeah, yeah. Googling,
Um,
happily looking for the information on these big words that you're using, and it's good fun. It's
just
quite
all well,
it's
good. I'm
a
glad it,
challenge, you know.
it
It's
can
a
be
it's a,
amusing.
it's a smartphone game now
There's not a
too.
lot of depth in on my part. It's just like what's a good title.
Yeah, titles are fun. I think
Yeah,
they're important, but they're
they
fun.
are important and they're really hard to come up with.
Mm, mm. But yeah, it's a smartphone game now as well, and it's got a musical look to it.
Uh,
I hadn't played it. Music's my smartphone. That's the game, you know. But I
what's
don't.
that?
Music's my game. I don't
Oh
really
yeah, yeah.
play, like get video
Well, good
games
for
or anything.
you.
Um, but it's the same kind of occupation. I can see the obsession with it.
Mhm.
Um, but yes, it's. I don't know if you know a thing by Ian Ring called the Scale Finder. It's a,
No.
quite a bizarre website where you can put any sequence of 1 to 12 notes in, and it'll name the scale and give you citations in the literature, and it's clever. It really gets into
If
some deep water.
if there's more than one name for a scale, will it supply the alternatives?
Yeah, you can rotate the modes, and you can find the names for it. Um,
Mhm.
Marcel was looking at the scale that Steve Vai supplied to Modern Guitar Harmony a few months ago, and
Uh-huh.
it's turned up with some pretty crazy names for it and some suggestions of others. Um,
Yeah, I mean, considering
Aya,
there's only 12 notes, probably all the combinations have been explored by now
yeah, yeah.
multiple times.
We're in big numbers, but not infinite. That's back to the
Right,
Goodrick approach, I
right,
think.
right.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't want to grill you on the whole album, but I'll ask a few more questions about
Sure.
different titles and that. One thing that crossed my mind, you like your numbers, you like working with permutations of numbers.
Uh-huh.
1973, is it a year or is it a sequence of numbers?
Oh, it's just that's one of the less meaningful titles,
Okay.
but it was just something that it was a tune that sort of evoked some nostalgia, and that was a good year for me. So
Yeah.
it's purely the year. Numbers have nothing to do with that.
Yeah, I remember it too. I thought it might be a year, but I was curious. Um, I, as I say, I'll not go down all of them, but the Lipo
Hmm.
track,
You actually don't need my guitar.
that's the, yeah,
What's that?
The Lipo track, the
Oh, right. Well, that's
Chinese poem.
a
Yeah,
setting of the Lily Poe poem, uh, which I especially like. Uh,
a very beautiful poem. I've known it for many years, and
oh,
it's
really? Okay,
quite
great.
special. Yeah, it
Uh
really
huh.
is. And
Yeah, I guess it was one of his hits.
yeah, sitting alone in
Um,
the mountains until the two become one, and things
hmm.
like that. It's a special, special. piece of writing. I didn't realize it was so old. It's from about the 8th century.
Right.
So I thought it was the time of Shakespeare. I was confusing him with Basho or someone. So it's
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I didn't. I guess it was sort of a dark take on on oneness, but maybe the takeaway is like meditation isn't always so peaceful.
hmm,
Um, but that one is it's actually two tone rows. At least the melody is just based on one tone row, and then another one with the same words, and that's it. And we did it a number of different ways, and the way the version we used, the melody is just sung at the very end.
it really is great to hear songs mixed into these kind of extended instrumental pieces, and the use of the voice with words and without words is lovely too. It's very interesting.
Well, yeah, I think there's just that one, and then my mom's song at the end.
Yeah, that
And
was a
of
lovely
course,
surprise too.
the idea of songs are like are important to me, and it's kind of a way of bridging things that might be considered complex with things that are more accessible.
Yeah, yeah. So many families must have those recordings from childhood. We've got some, and it's really touching to hear them. They're lovely.
Yeah, well, I had no idea that this thing existed. I mean, I vaguely remember the recording itself. To my memory, it only happened once. But my dad brought home a reel-to-reel tape recorder and said, "Okay, we're just gonna like randomly record some stuff." And so, and I remember that event, but I had no idea these tapes actually existed until my brother somehow unearthed them and put it all on a CD and sent it to me. And so, among like many things, including my dad like practicing a science lecture
Yeah.
and a few other things, there were a couple of songs that my mother sang just a cappella, and her voice, yeah, kind of blew me away. I
Mm.
didn't realize how beautiful she sang. So uh, a few years ago, just had the idea as more as a gift to her than to I had no intention of actually using it on a record ever, but I just made this arrangement on baritone guitar and sent it off.
Yeah, it works a treat as a coda to the album. It's perfect. And each single disc ends with a kind of more reflective track with the standard
Well,
When.
like I said, I had too much slow stuff, so
Yeah,
I had to put it in the strategic places.
it's the old time when you used to have to turn the vinyl over almost. It's
Right.
just about like that. Um, the baritone guitar you mentioned, is it standard baritone tuning? Just the fourth,
Um,
third from A?
I'm not sure. I mean, it's A to A.
Yeah, yeah, that would be
No. Yes.
octave
Yeah.
below the fifth fret.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's A. Yeah. Exactly.
yeah.
And it's right. So it was a Tysco bass that was converted into a six-string
Oh wow.
guitar.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's a great instrument.
So it's an
Um,
electric instrument.
oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds very acoustic on the recording.
Uh-huh.
It's
Um, it's possible that we mic'd it.
uh,
I think, yeah, Joe would often put a mic right on the guitar itself, even when I was playing electric, so he could mix in some of that sound. So that might be what you're hearing.
perhaps, yeah. As we said when we checked your guitar level, it's very very sensitive when you're miking to get the
Mm.
acoustic sound of a Strat or a Telecaster even.
Yeah, it'd be
Strange.
nice to mix that in subtly for sure.
So could we talk about the instruments you've used on the recording? Is there a fair selection of instruments, or are you on the 335
I think
most
it's
of the
just the
time?
three. It's just my usual Ibanez for the bulk of it, and then the baritone for two tracks, and then my Martin acoustic. It's an old. It's from 1936.
Aha, that
Really,
might that explains a few things. I was interested in the sound. Is that on Ataraxia?
yeah.
It is. I thought it would be.
Hmm.
Um, you're doing some wild guitar patterns on that in a beautiful way. They're very accurate, but I'm hearing almost a tabla part the way you're playing it on the guitar.
Oh, it's funny. Well, the original idea for that was I was just playing around with like hammering on and like hammer on and pull off patterns, and that's kind of it. And so maybe the tabla effect, like that's the first time I even considered that, but the effect is just like all the hammering on that I'm doing. So I just came up with a number of hammer on pull off patterns and kind of form that into a long song.
And if it's not too personal, where did you find the word ataraxia? Because I had to look it up. Does it
Um,
mean relaxation?
or equanimity.
Yeah.
Uh, I honestly don't even remember, but again, like I had to call it something.
I looked up the word
It might have been one of those
sesquipedalian
like
the other day.
it might have been one of those word of the day things that I get in my email sometimes. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I looked up the word sesquipedalian, which means love of long words, and I couldn't believe it. We're trying to find out the name of the word, you know.
That's
But
funny.
it's you're making a lovely job of describing that mood with the effortless energy in the guitar
Well,
accompaniment part to the voice line over the top. And it's as
good.
if the
I mean,
voice line's the relaxation. It's a
for a
lovely.
very long time, the working title of that was just the commission because it was a commission,
Yeah.
literally from um, someone who wanted to wanted me to write a piece for her son, and so for forever that was kind of the working title, but I couldn't very well call it that. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's
um, yeah,
immersive. As you listen to it, it develops and changes, and it's one of the most impressive things I've heard you do. It's
no,
really special.
thanks. Yeah, there's a lot going on in the guitar part, but my intention was to kind of unify it with the vocal melody, which is really stems from a very um, finite amount of material. Like it kind of every melodic phrase can be traced to the first couple of statements if
Mhm.
you actually think about it. So that was the intention because I know it's like a lot to digest. Um, whether I'm inverting it or expanding it or whatever. Um, there's actually not a ton going on melodically.
You talked to Joel Harrison in an interview a few years ago about
Hmm.
the logic and the working out of the ideas being the hard work and coming up with the themes
Well,
was the easy
sure.
work. And this
Yeah.
sounds like you've worked hard on it to develop it so far. And there's some really good results in it.
Well, yeah. I was just reading this biography of Brahms, and his whole thing was like, don't trust your intuition. Like, I wouldn't literally take that advice, but your intuition by itself is not enough. You need to actually really hack away at something in order to make it perfect and make it translatable and interesting and effective over the long term.
Is the guitar tuned standard tuning or is it an open tuning
Oh, on that piece,
on that piece?
that it's yeah, it's pretty. It's okay. It's very different actually.
Ah,
Um, the low string is tuned down to an A, so I have A, and then D, G, and then A, D. So the top two strings are down a whole step, and the bottom string is down an octave lower than the A.
I'm pleased I asked. Do you get a sound like a cymbal crash on the last note with the bass string?
Yeah, because it like flaps against the neck, I guess.
In a beautiful way. It's a good, it's what the instrument does. It's great. It is.
Well, I tried using a thicker string for that because I thought it would be more resonant, but it sounded like crap, like it was like kind of thuddy and dead.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it doesn't always work. Thicker is not always better.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so it's just a standard like set of I think light or medium acoustic strings.
So, sorry, what type of strings?
Just light or medium.
Yeah. Are they phosphor bronze or nickel?
Yeah, yeah,
Phosphor bronze.
bronze.
Yeah. Yeah. And is it a 12th fret neck on this 36 Martin? Is it one of the small bodied ones or?
I don't know.
I
Hang
can't
on.
remember.
Just happen to have it.
Ah,
It's a O. I can never remember if it's 18 or 19, but it's,
hmm,
you know,
that's beautiful. 14th fret.
14.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so 12 is here. That's what you mean. Like so
Yeah.
14 before the body starts.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
It's beautiful. It's really recorded well. It sounds very good. Um, let's have a look. Can we talk about the standard? Marcel noticed that you'd added a section to Where or When. The
I
Roger.
added a section.
He thought you'd added an intro to it from another time he'd heard you play it. I think that's the tune he was talking about.
Did I add something? I don't know.
I could be
Maybe.
misquoting him. I might have misunderstood what he said.
I mean, I, I have like short intros to each of the choruses, um, but maybe that's what he means.
Could you say something about the choice of a slow tempo? Because that's extremely slow and it works.
Oh, it is. It's about as fast as I can play it and get all the notes out. I mean,
Okay.
it gets pretty dense at times, so
Yeah.
I think I really just needed it to be a certain tempo for it to come out.
Yeah.
But the great thing about standards is you can really interpret them any way you want.
Mhm.
Like I tend to play. I'll remember April really slow, but it's generally thought of as more of an up tempo tune. So
Yeah.
sometimes things are really effective as ballads that are not normally thought of as ballads.
Mhm.
Uh, but it just seemed natural to play this tune at this tempo, I guess.
And
And so the first chorus is kind of treated with like I'm starting with an ostinato, and it's a relatively like simple chorus. It's still reharmonized a bit, but it's not like too bad. I think the first day is almost the same. I'm almost not reharmonizing at all. And then I thought an interesting idea for the second A section was to start on the four chord because the melody still kind of works. Um, and then, well, I don't want to get into the whole conversation of it, but the idea was to just have it get gradually more, of course, across the two choruses, have it get more and more dense, and have more counterpoint and stuff.
mhm, mhm. It's nice to see a standard on a record so far out as this, literally with all of the space references and myth references. And Again, thought the title fitted very well. With
Well,
just
sometimes it's a good way to just pour cold water over your brain.
yep, it's almost a pun with everything else around it. It's cool.
Hmm.
Um, and other retro things, Colin Sport. I haven't seen the TV program, the Gothic soap that it was referencing. Um,
Um, well, I think there's been some kind of a reboot of it, but I haven't really uh, investigated. But I just remember the show from when I was a little kid. We'd come up from school and watch it. We were like obsessed with it because it was so creepy.
I've forgotten its name. It's
Dark
Dark,
Shadows.
Dark Shadows. That's right. Yeah, that's the one. But I'll check it out. And
Yeah, or not. I don't know. I think I tried to look for it, and it didn't. A little while ago, and it didn't really. I don't know if it really held up, but it was a great thing to watch if you're like 6 years old and want to be creeped out.
yeah, so it takes me back to the Outer Limits when that was streamed in
Oh yeah,
UK and things like that. But sometimes the music's extreme on those programs too. When it's a extreme subject matter, you get some weird music, which is the bonus.
yeah. So, but that piece was originally called a 124I. That was the working title, and that's because basically most of the chords I was working with were 0 1 2 4s,
Yeah,
meaning like the pitch class set, but the inversion, hence the I.
yeah,
So that was one of those working titles that I couldn't really keep.
yeah.
3PSC was a working title that I did keep
That's where I was
because I was
leading
just
to.
like officially out of titles. I'm like, it's fine. I'm just going to call it that because
Yeah.
I'm done.
It works, and in a way, it's worked because that isn't actually a direct reference to the almanac theories, although it's a nod in that direction, clearly.
It's
And
why would you say it's not? Because
well, Mick references the three-part spread clusters a couple of
mm-hmm.
times, but he writes out the four-part clusters, and you've come back to the three-part harmony with it.
um, no, in volume 3, there's three. It's the pattern that I'm using as the basis for that piece is right there in
Oh,
the
great.
as 3-part spread clusters.
Okay.
So it literally is 3-part split spread clusters to 3-part fourths.
Yeah.
So 3PSC is actually shortened a little bit because it would be also 3-part fourths, and that's that's well. I think I've probably played this before, but
You mentioned
it's,
it last interview, and it's
yeah,
great to actually get this on
it's this
record.
one. That's that's it in C major. But I tried to get a bunch of things, mostly 3-part cycles from volume 3 in that piece. So it starts with that one, but there's like probably a half dozen more of them spread throughout the piece.
Yeah.
And then the idea is like there are motives that just automatically exist within that pattern, and that constitutes the melodic content. And so it's kind of like there's a statement, and then the second half of the statement kind of acts as a counter statement itself, so that could be developed like separately.
Mhm.
Um, so, but everything kind of comes right out of the pattern itself, so it's kind of neat. It's neat how much potential material there is in a very finite amount of information. I find that really fun to explore.
Mm, agreed. And it's almost another performance exploring it and finding what happens on Wednesday afternoon when you explore it, as opposed to what happens on Friday morning.
Yeah, that's true, of course.
And something new comes up each time you look at these things. It's interesting
Yeah,
you're going for the completest thing, but there are huge numbers involved when you start bringing the clusters onto the into the mix. Once and with
Right.
modulation, of course.
Sure. Sure. No, it is literally infinite once you start taking all that stuff into account.
Am I hearing some quarter tone writing for the voices as well? I don't know if it's just grace notes
Shit,
under direction.
not intentionally.
Okay, I don't want to upset or insult anyone. It sounds great, but I think they're just grace notes, you know.
Oh, possibly. Yeah, yeah. Okay, that I'll accept that. I
Or
mean,
wild minor seconds.
what pieces are you thinking about?
I'm probably thinking of the opening piece on the first track, the Urubus too.
Oh, okay.
I think I heard it on that. It could be on the second track. Is that the Mentaculus, which we haven't talked about yet?
Yeah, there's no voices on that one,
Oh, it's
but
definitely the Urubus then, the first one.
yeah. Huh.
But it could just be my inadequate speakers struggling with some of the mix. It's the stereo mix on the sound is really lovely too, when the voices start to
Well,
spread.
as long as it sounds good, then
Sounds
quarter
fine.
tones are welcome.
Nothing wrong with that, you know. I was
But
curious if you had been working on, you know, the further
no,
sort of
I'm not quite there yet.
yeah, yeah,
I got my hands full with just the 12 notes.
yeah. And are you working mainly with two and three part harmony, or are you thinking four a lot on the album?
Well, depending on the piece, I'm not really thinking three or four. I mean,
Yeah.
like, some of these harmonies are like wider than that and
Mhm.
not really easily reduced to that kind of nomenclature. Um, but like okay, so the pieces that are literally cycle based or like the almanac based, um, I'm probably thinking more three part. Like the
Yeah.
Mentaculus is a almanac piece, um, primarily as well. Uh, that started as I think I've also probably talked about with you or with somebody. That started out as the three part fourths in cycle four. Um, but yeah, different pieces have different harmonic schemes that are not necessarily just thinking of four moving parts. Probably where when there's a lot of three and four part treatments of that uh, the melody.
Mm. And talking about the Mentaculus, is it a reference to the Coen Brothers movie?
Of course, yeah,
Yeah, I thought it was. That's right. I saw it recently for the first time.
it's a
So
great movie.
it is. It's a very good movie and a great concept. The probability map of the universe.
Yes,
It
and
fits in
I
so
love
well.
the Richard Kind character also. It's just
Drawings look so convincing, you know.
and there's another one where what do I call this thing?
Mm.
Why not just go big?
Yep, yep, yeah, yeah. That's it's working. It's definitely working. So how would you conceive of a listener listening to this? I'm thinking back to an album by Kip Hanrahan. He did a Arabian Nights long form, and he suggested a break in the middle of the CD even for the 1001 Nights. Kip Hanrahan.
Uh huh.
He said,
Uh,
give it 40 minutes, take a break, give it another 35.
um,
Could you imagine a performance of the whole album with two breaks?
well, I kind of just did that actually. I had a sort of a release party, listening party at a bar. Um, and the idea was whoever wanted to listen could go into the listening area of the room, and I played disc one, and then took maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and then played disc two, and then took a break. So it seemed to work. Uh, I don't know. I would hope that if one wanted to spend 3 hours listening to it, it could remain engaging, but I'm not entirely sure it will. You could just take them one at a time and listen to one week and another week, and I don't know. I don't really have any. I'm not envisioning any specific plan for how to listen to
I remember getting an album from John Damian once, and it had listening
it. Mhm.
instructions on a sheet.
That's hilarious.
It was very funny. I don't know if you've seen them, but it
No,
was a long list. It
but
was a
I'd
good
like
list.
to. Yeah, I'd like to see that record and the list.
I'll dig the
If you
list out.
send it
I've
to
got
me.
it saved. It's funny. It's worth seeing.
And did you follow those instructions?
I think most of them, yes. It's some good recommendations. So
Can you
you'll see.
remember anything? Like, did it
It was
enhance the
definitely
listening experience?
not to be played while washing dishes, and
Oh, okay.
I think he recommends a good brandy, and he wants a focused, attentive listening. It's a great argument for it. So he's instructive and educational, even in the recommendations on how to listen. So it's a very nice touch, and with his
Yeah.
sense of humor, of
Well,
course, it's
right.
a bad photocopy with personal listening instructions for dot 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 written on it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he filled the
No, I
names
like
in.
that idea.
So that was
Um,
cool.
I mean, attentive, focused listening would kind of hopefully be a given,
Mm. Yeah, yeah,
but you can't always take that for granted.
sure, sure. It's often a problem at gigs and everywhere else these days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was something that was kind of nice about this event the other day. It was kind of like it was almost like a concert of a record, you know. So everyone that was in that room was, you know, we were all kind of focused on the music, um, which is not necessarily always the way we listen to records.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
listen in the background. We could be washing the dishes, and you know, there's no one around. So okay, I'm gonna like check my phone 10 minutes into this piece. Um, but I do consciously try to make it part of my day. Maybe not every day, but at least a few times a week to listen to something exclusively and then just focus my attention 100%.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because something's worth hearing, then it's worth hearing like that, don't you think?
I agree entirely. It's respect for the artist. It has to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just so much more rewarding.
And learning. It's you get more learning from it too.
Sure.
So, is there anything comes to mind that you've heard in the last few weeks, looking ahead from this project,
That I've heard.
you've been listening to, or
Oh,
you've moved in?
uh, well, I'm still kind of in a big Brahmsian phase.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's just like an endless source of inspiration and enjoyment.
That's an
And
interesting contrast to what you've been doing.
yeah, kind of, but sometimes I feel like the influences like creeps in like harmonically, especially into some stuff that I'm writing now. There's a passage in a tune that I'm currently working on where it suggested this passage in a Tchaikovsky symphony, and I was like, this really needs to go to these harmonic places. So to the degree that I like put on the record and I just completely stole the progression right from the right from the Fourth Symphony. So we'll see if the estate comes after me. But yeah, there's danger of getting a little bit too literally influenced by what you're checking out.
Yeah. The beauty of the orchestral things brought to the guitar transforms the material almost
Yeah,
down into miniature form on the guitar.
right.
Tarraga, Francesco Tarraga did that a century ago and
Uh
did
huh.
some great jobs of the real chestnuts, the real big classics.
I'm not really familiar with those.
Yeah, I think there was a two-volume set called Works Classical and Romantic. It's a Spanish
Hmm.
title, but and he's got Beethoven Pathétique and some
Oh
of
wow.
the Brahms and Mendelssohn melodies, the Canzonetta by Mendelssohn, Songs
Hmm.
Without Words, and they're good arrangements, demanding. And
Oh, I'll have to listen to that.
yeah,
There's
I
of
think,
course the pictures at an exhibition. You've probably seen that.
yeah, yeah,
It's pretty wild.
yeah, yeah. But the tradition of transcribing for classical guitar in the early 20th century was quite fierce, and
Hmm.
it's been picked up by some people in recent years, but there's still lots to do, obviously, you know. It's fun to work through.
Yeah, that's. I haven't really delved into it too much, but you could probably do even more on electric guitar because you can
Mhm.
just technically you're able to grab more stuff, on electric just because the strings are closer together and
Yeah,
lower and etc.
yeah.
Um,
There's less physical resistance, certainly.
yeah,
Some of the Targa pieces I'm talking about, it's as if he had a machine for a left hand, the clamps of the bars that he's doing,
wow.
and it's absolutely impossible on an ordinary classical guitar with ordinary hands, you know.
So, what's a good performance of that you'd recommend?
Oh, there's a guy from Italy that I've heard a few times. Giulio Tampolini does some of them,
Okay,
and Tampolini, and I'd have to dig deep into the text. I've read the scores more than I've heard them performed,
oh, I see. Okay.
but I've got some of the editions, and I think they're now out of copyright. They're freely available, so
Hmm.
they'll be on Petrucci on IMSLP, where there's the score repository online.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
You should be able to get them there.
Uh-huh.
I think it's called Obras Clásicas y Románticas.
Okay, yeah, I remember that.
Works classical and romantic.
Uh-huh.
And they're fun. There might be some of the pieces you're talking about. I'm sure there was some Tchaikovsky and certainly some Brahms. So,
Great.
yeah. So thinking ahead, are you planning a follow-up for the album here? I know it's been a 3-year project. You need some time probably.
Yeah, I need a break.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, I am, I immediately just started working on a new batch of material, and the idea is to not do what I did,
Mhm.
and, shorter form things, more song-like. I think I'm going to involve vocals again, um, but we'll see how it turns out. I've got like 4 or 5 things I'm working on,
And
but I
with
don't. I
Hydra,
definitely don't have a timeline for that. Just
yeah,
trying to not put too much pressure.
understandably so. Even when some project like this finishes, it still feels as if it's following you around for a few months, I think.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Uh,
In my experience. But I'm asking a question back to Hydra. You published the scores for that. Would you have any consideration of publishing the scores for Planetarium?
uh, yeah, I'll make the scores available. I don't know if I'm going to do another book, but at the very least, I'll offer them on my website,
Oh, brilliant.
um,
That's really good to know.
probably for free, maybe for like a donation to something. But yeah, so I am working on getting those like cleaned up and in readable form. We're almost there. So yeah. Between that and the arrangements from my last record of standards, I'll have those all available.
Oh, that's great. And that was the Day After Day album.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. That's really good to know. I'll name check the 2 volumes of the Mel Bay books just in case any of the people watching on
Oh,
Modern Guitar
okay.
Harmony don't know. And they've been so useful as study scores.
Oh,
And
great.
so thank you.
Good to
You
hear that.
you kind of you dismissed them a little bit last time we spoke, but they have been so useful. So thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
there's a lot of instruction in there, you know. So even just sitting in an armchair looking at the chord changes and the voice leading, it's useful.
Good Good. Yeah, it's really a lot of work putting those together, and
Yeah.
not always so rewarding. So yeah, the easier thing is just to get them into shape and just put them up for grabs, I think.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, the hardest thing is putting in all the fingering. So I don't know if I'm going to be doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, that's really tedious stuff.
Which
Because
software are you using? Are you doing it by
oh, I
hand?
have nah, I write everything by hand.
Yeah.
So I have a friend that is engraving them for me.
For fingering, it's the quickest way. I can get the dots into software, but putting the little numbers next to the notes is a job and a half.
Yeah, yeah. Can imagine. So I don't know. I might do fingerings. With problem is like by the time I have something written out, or by the time I put it into Sibelius or have my friend do it, I don't always remember how to play it. So I
Yeah.
have to relearn the entire things in order to get putting the fingering notations. And that's that can be a ton of just a real time suck.
It's double the work. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're reaching a natural end. We've done an hour here, so we could
Okay.
we could wind down if you like.
Sure.
It's been fantastic talking to you about this.
Well,
It's an
thanks.
insight into what
Appreciate
you're
your
doing.
interest.
Oh, it's thank you so much for sharing your time and for the hard work with the album. I think I've covered everything I've got scribbled on my piece of paper here. Um, don't think I missed anything. The only name I haven't asked about is Onsulian Spring.
Uh huh. Okay. Well, when my wife was in, I think, middle school, she wrote a paper about an imaginary planet and its inhabitants, and the planet was called Onsulia.
Ah,
So there you get another
yeah.
unintentional sci-fi association. But so that's where that comes from.
Thank you. That's useful. Anyone that wants more information and all the things we're talking about today, there's quite a good set of notes on the Bandcamp page too. So we've got a lot of
Oh,
those
right,
references
yeah.
already on the
There's
Bandcamp. So they're cool. Um, I'll say thank you and end the recording here now so Marcel can do some editing and tidy it up a little. But
okay. Sounds
so
good.
grateful for you to share your time. So I'll say thank you for Modern Guitar Harmony and stop the recording, and then we can chat maybe a minute or two.
Sure, sounds good. Well,
That's
thank you,
great.
Mick.
Thank you again, Ben Monder. Thank you.
Take care.